I'd like to welcome everybody to today's Veterans Day program. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Sheldon Goldberg. I'm the adjutant of Post 692 Jewish War Veterans. Before I begin today's program, however, I'd like to take a minute and draw your attention to the sculpture in the middle of the plaza. 15 years ago today, on November 11th, 2008, this sculpture, the American Jewish Veterans Memorial, was dedicated on the grassy knoll behind me. Thanks to the generosity of the Adler family, who commissioned it and whose daughter Allison is here today, this beautiful piece of art was created by a local, albeit world-renowned artist, Mr. Philip Ratner. I'm sad to say that Mr. Ratner passed away on Thursday and is being buried, or may have already been buried, today. I never met Mr. Ratner, but I am proud to have been a member of the Post 692 committee that created this memorial plaza and made his artistry the centerpiece and a place where American Jewish veterans, both living and dead, can be remembered and honored. And I'd like if we'd all just take a moment of silence in honor of Mr. Ratner. Thank you. And those of you who can stand, please stand for the national anthem to be sung by Miss Cassie Sandez, the CEO of Voices of Vets.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets would glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
And if you will remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. I would now like to call upon Rabbi Colonel Ari Sasson, United States Army, to give us an invocation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and thank you for the honor to be here today. I'm still on active duty. People keep asking me, so I guess it's that age where people are not sure, but but I'm still on active duty currently, assistant professor at the National Defense University down in DC, teaching ethics and strategic warfare, and I also have just become the community rabbi of Magen David, just down the road. So very honored to be here today and to be here with the veterans. I am a war veteran, but I'm also a member of the Jewish War Veterans, been for many years since my posting at the military academy at West Point, where the Jewish War Veterans would always come on Friday evening and prepare food for the cadets, and everyone became a member at that point. So please join me in a word of prayer. Avinu Shebashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Goalo. Our Father in heaven, Rock and Redeemer of Israel, may He who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, bless this gathering today as we celebrate Veterans Day in honor of our Jewish war veterans. Almighty God, bless our nation, United States of America, safeguarded, and its ideals of freedom and liberty. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu put a spirit of wisdom and understanding into the hearts of our political and military leaders, that they may uphold the peace, advance the welfare of the nation, and deal kindly and justly with all the house of Israel. Bless our veterans, many of whom are present today, who have defended our nation through its conflicts and war. And may they continue to be proud representatives of Abraham and Sarah, our forebears, who were steadfast in their defense of truth, justice, and peace. We also pray for our brothers and sisters in the land of Israel, who are engaged in an existential war against an evil and barbaric enemy. May you crown them with the crown of salvation and the wreath of victory. And may the prophecy be fulfilled, for your God goes forth with you against your enemies to save you. Let us say, Amen.
I'd like to now introduce Mr. Michael Glick, the commander of Post 692.
Do better with these glasses, thank you. So good afternoon. I'd like to thank everyone for coming here to commemorate the service of all veterans, not only those who are present at our event here today, but for veterans throughout our great country. I'd also like to thank Secretary Woods, National Commander Colonel Lischinsky for attending, Colonel Brog, as well as representatives from Congressman Trone and Senator Van Hollen's offices. I'd also like to give special thanks to Josh Bender and Marcy Blackman of the JCC for hosting this event today. And I'd especially like to offer my gratitude to Lieutenant Colonel Sheldon Goldberg for organizing this wonderful event, especially the coffee. So as was just said, while yesterday and today into today is typically a joyous time to celebrate all veterans of the United States, I'd like to digress momentarily just to recognize our Jewish brethren who are tragically affected by the horrific terrorist acts on the 7th of October in Israel. We grieve for those who were murdered, beaten, and unfortunately raped. We cry for those who were kidnapped and are hostages in Gaza, from senior citizen age down to 10 months old. And we console those affected by all this terror and bloodshed. And as the Israel Defense Forces continue to conduct Operation Swords of Iron in Gaza, freeing Gaza from the Hamas terrorists, we wish them success in carrying out their mission, while also grieving for our brothers and sisters who fell fighting for the state of Israel. And now for a little history lesson. So for those of you who might not be aware, Veterans Day holiday was originally known as Armistice Day, memorializing the end of World War I. The reason why it's called Armistice Day was that an armistice was signed between the Allied forces and German troops on the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. Even though the official end of the war was established by the signing of the Treaty of Versailles 7 months later on the 28th of June, 1919. I guess it took a while for word to get out. Twitter wasn't around then, but you got my drift. 1 year later, President Woodrow Wilson proclaimed the 11th of November as the first commemoration of Armistice Day, which was originally established to honor veterans of World War I. And in 1954, Congress amended that act commemorating Armistice Day with the urging of veteran service organizations, renaming the day as Veterans Day to honor veterans of all wars. To this day, Veterans Day is a celebration to honor America's veterans for their patriotism, love of country, and a willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. Although we're celebrating Veterans Day a day later, yesterday was the official day, I'd like to take this moment to honor all fellow veterans who served this great nation of ours, including allied nations, in times of peace and as well as war. So at this time, I'd like to ask all those who have proudly worn the uniform to please stand so we can all recognize those who have served. And on behalf of myself, the JWV, and all those here, I want to thank you for your dedication and service to this great nation. Thank you.
Mr. Josh Bender, CEO of the Bender JCC. Come on down.
Thank you, Sheldon. Welcome, everybody. I'm Josh Bender, the CEO here of the Bender JCC of Greater Washington. And as we gather today, I was standing in the back reflecting on all the ways that we as a community have been convening, a convener of the community through these challenging few weeks we've all seen unfolding. We've had so many gatherings at the Bender JCC supporting our community and being a convener of so many people. And so today is another example of these moments during the year that as a JCC we gather the community to mark really, really important moments. I do want to take a second just to thank our Jewish war veterans, Sheldon, Michael, and all the war veterans who have made it really an important value for our community here by creating this memorial and this beautiful sculpture that Sheldon was referencing a few moments ago. It's a constant reminder, not just on Veterans Day, but every day walking by this space and remembering the sacrifice and the service of our veterans. I do want to take a moment to thank actually the facilities team of the JCC who have worked with our Jewish war veterans, with Sheldon, Michael, and others, just recently to sort of refurbish, repaint our memorial wall here. It wasn't long ago I was standing here with Phil Ratner actually as he was touching up and cleaning this very special sculpture. So we're really grateful to the Jewish war veterans who have created this space for us and gather us in all of these important ways. So I want to thank all of you for being here and being part of this really important and special day. Thank you.
We're supposed to be apolitical, but it'd be a shame if I didn't ask and invite some VIPs to come along. So I would first like to ask Miss Diana Eisenstadt, representing Senator Chris Van Hollen, to come up and say a word or two.
So happy to be here with you. We'll call it Veterans Weekend. How about that? Just got a promotion. I enjoyed hearing your stories and about your service, and I want to, stand here and honor you for your service. I wish the senator could be here in person. He's here in spirit, I can assure you. And he did ask me to share a few words for you. So on this weekend, we honor the men and women who valiantly answered the call of duty, dedicating themselves to serving our country and defending our freedom. We owe an enduring debt of gratitude to our veterans and current service members, and of course to all of their families, for their courage and their sacrifice. We must rededicate ourselves to ensuring that a grateful nation keeps its promises to them, and that all of our veterans, past and present, are supported and recognized in full. And let me also just acknowledge that the senator and our team stands in solidarity with Israel in this very difficult time, thinking about the idea. You can please feel free to call our office. We are available to speak with you. We are able to get some information if that's something that's hard for you to get. And we've been helping to get people out of Israel, so that's something else that we're happy to do. And I can speak with any of you afterwards if you'd like. But thank you for having me here today, and very much in honor of your service. Thank you.
I'd next like to ask Mr. Benton Anthony, representing Congressman David Trone, to come up and say a few words.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benton Anthony, and unfortunately, while the congressman isn't able to make it, he is, much like the senator, here in spirit with you all. Thank you very much for the bravery in which you served, and happy Veterans Day weekend. But I do have a statement from the congressman that I will read out. And thank you very much to the Lieutenant Colonel for making this event possible, and for everyone, and for the JCC to host. Our nation's veterans have made tremendous sacrifices to protect our country and uphold democratic ideals. Across the nation, we gather together to honor their dedication and remember each day we are safe and free. It's a day made possible by their service. We can never repay these brave men and women for all they've done for us, but we can make sure they receive the benefits they rightly earned. Right now, there are more than 377,000 veterans in Maryland. They served our country with honor, and we must now honor their service. As the son of a World War II combat veteran, this mission is personal and of utmost importance to me. I know that returning to civilian life takes a toll on our veterans, and it's important that we provide them with the best possible mental care and physical health care. That's why I helped pass into law the 988 Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Our veterans can now dial 988 and press 1 to get immediate veteran-tailored mental health care. It only takes one phone call, one person, and one conversation to save a life. But I also want to ensure our veterans get the benefits they earned. That's why I helped pass the Honoring Our Pact Act, which delivered more than $1.4 billion in benefits to services, to veterans, and made nearly 3.5 million toxic exposed veterans eligible for care. The law included my Faster Presumptions Act, which cut the red tape, resulting in 3.9 million veterans receiving exposure screenings and more than 700,000 claims filed since the law's passage. But the job's not done. That's why every day I make a promise to honor our veterans through action. You can count on it. And if you have any questions or need anything, you're more than welcome to call our office. I'll be hanging around after the event. Please come up and speak with me if you need. Thank you very much.
Yeah, the uniform still fits, but the eyes aren't quite as good as they used to be. Secretary Anthony Woods is a West Point graduate and was commissioned as a lieutenant in the United States Army. He served 2 tours of duty in Iraq, where he earned a Bronze Star for his service. He was discharged from the Army in 2008 and now serves in the U.S. Army Reserves. He currently holds the rank of Major and serves as an intelligence analyst assigned to the Joint Staff at the Pentagon. Tony now leads the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs, whose mission it is to assist veterans, active duty service members, and their families and dependents in securing benefits earned through their uniformed service. He has an extensive background of public and private service that included service as a program director at Service Nation, a national nonprofit dedicated to increasing national and volunteer service, as a White House Fellow in the U.S. Office of Personnel Management under President Barack Obama, and on former U.S. Veterans Affairs Secretary Bob McDonnell's Commission on Minority Veterans, and serves on Blue Star Families Advisory Board on Race, Equity, and Inclusion. Tony has a Bachelor of Science in Economics and Political Science, a Master's in Public Policy from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and an Executive MBA from the University of Maryland's Robert H. Smith School of Business. And it is an absolute honor for me to welcome Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Mr. Anthony Woods, to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. Although for some reason it feels like morning. I don't really know why. It really is a privilege to be here. I also want to thank the JCC of Greater Washington. I actually sort of had a last-minute invitation to join the Ravens game for Salute to Service or something like that, and I said no. I actually really wanted to be here, very specifically because, one, I've just personally been on a mission to make sure that my department does a better job of acknowledging the service of the diverse range of people who have worn our uniform and serve our country. And so I personally wanted to be here to thank our Jewish war veterans and Jewish veterans for their service to our country. But the other piece is, I was also very struck by and horrified by what we saw occur in Israel on October 7th. And I know all Jewish people have very different perspectives on Israel, and everyone, it's not a monolith, and I understand that, but I can only speak to, talking with many of my Jewish friends, and what really has broken my heart since talking with them has just been the fact that they have been made to feel vulnerable as a result of the terrorist attacks by Hamas, but also that after and watching the kind of protests that have struck up, that they have also then had to be involved in making sure that there is no excusing of acts like that, and it's making it as though it's acceptable to prey upon innocent people. And so for that, I thought it was very important to be here, more so from a perspective of solidarity. And I just wanted to make it known that I stand with you, and I am also praying for the Israeli Defense Forces and that they can bring a swift end to this conflict and to restore safety and security for the Israeli people. I also want to acknowledge the passing of, and many of you probably know, my predecessor, former Secretary George Owings. He was a really incredible man who passed away, unfortunately, just last week after a battle with cancer. He was really an incredible man, a Marine veteran, and a delegate where he had the foresight to turn our Maryland Veteran Commission, to turn it into the Maryland Department of Veterans Affairs. And one of the things that I've loved that he said was that the department was created in 1999, but it was built for many, many years afterwards with volunteers like you have here and veterans that you have here and many of the employees of the department. And so I think it's actually fitting that we have Veterans Day the week after his passing, so it gives an opportunity just to acknowledge him and the incredible contributions he's made to veterans here across the state. So I'll go ahead and sort of shift into my official mode and simply say, one, a happy birthday to our Marines. I think it was Friday, was the Marine Corps birthday. Yep, there you go. But also a happy Veterans Day, and I get to do that on behalf of Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller. So today, of course, is an opportunity for us to honor and to celebrate those who have served our country in uniform. And that's why actually on Thursday, Governor Moore signed 2 executive orders. The first one was to create a Global War on Terrorism memorial, which will serve a few purposes. One, obviously, to honor those we've lost in the Global War on Terror, but it's also a reminder for those who have served that they actually have hard-earned benefits that a grateful nation wants to provide to them, and so encourage them to go forward and take advantage of that. But I also think it serves the purpose of encouraging the next generation of people to consider service and to sign up in defense of our country. And then finally, I would hope that we create a monument or memorial that has the effect of encouraging our nation's leaders to be thoughtful about when we authorize people to serve in war and to go into harm's way, and to make sure that we're doing so when it is justified and is necessary. The second thing that the governor signed, or executive order, was actually reaffirming the governor's commitment to the governor's challenge to end suicide among service members, veterans, and their families. In 2020, which was the last year that we have data for, or the most recent year that we have data for, 79 Marylanders died by suicide, and they were connected to the military in some way. And so we are recommitting ourselves to driving those numbers down and eliminating that challenge. And of course, I'm very appreciative of our leadership at the federal level for passing the legislation that helped to create 988, and then of course the Maryland legislature also helped to invest in that infrastructure. This week we also have the opportunity to celebrate and honor families who also contribute to our nation's defense, but often don't get the credit that they deserve. In my office in Annapolis, I actually proudly display one of my favorite mementos, and it's actually my mom's Blue Star family's flag. Many of us who were in the military-connected community will recognize this as the rectangular flag with the kind of crimson-red border, white rectangular field, and then blue stars denoting the number of loved ones that you have serving overseas. And so I actually keep this in my office as a reminder of the sacrifices that our military families make. It actually wasn't until I returned home from my second deployment to Iraq and I kind of came off the plane and I saw the look of fatigue in my mom's eyes that I realized that this was a pretty stressful and anxiety-inducing experience that she had just gone through. You know, she had no way of knowing when I was safe, which was 99% of the time, and the 1% of the time when I was actually in real danger, right? To a parent and to a loved one, you always assume that your loved one is always in danger. And so, but I know military families experience a lot more than stress and anxiety. They make sacrifices big and small, all year round, every single day. And they make them in the form of birthdays and anniversaries that are missed while their loved one is in the field or on temporary duty. They sacrifice when a spouse has to comfort nervous kids during a natural disaster while their National Guard loved one takes care of those in need 2 towns over. They sacrifice when they struggle to make ends meet and put food on the table because a military spouse's career has taken a back seat to the career of the service member during many, many moves to many different installations. And so this Veterans Day, that's why we actually launched a new initiative called Maryland Joins Forces. It's designed and it's really based on the premise that when a military family thrives or when a veteran's family thrives, well, so does the veteran and so does the service member. We want to work with all sectors, government, nonprofit, and corporate, to really focus on 5 key areas. First, employment. Second is education. Third, food and housing insecurity, which is a big challenge, of course, in our community. Health and wellness. And then service. How do we create opportunities for members of the civilian world and our military community to serve right alongside one another and build new bonds? We're inviting organizations to join my department and the administration in doing exactly that. And when those organizations step up, they'll help to ensure that when someone says thank you for your service in Maryland, it's more than just a nice sentiment, but it's actually something that's backed through action. And when you talk about service, we know that it doesn't just refer to those who serve in a military uniform, but it also includes the families and the loved ones who have had their back the entire time. And so with that, I'll just offer a heartfelt thank you for all that you all have done in service to our country, and a happy Veterans Day. And then if you'll indulge me, Colonel Goldberg, if I could present you with a governor's proclamation proclaiming today, or excuse me, November 11th, Veterans Day. And if I could just read this really quickly for the audience, and then I'll hand this over to you. So this is a proclamation from the governor of the state of Maryland on this Veterans Day, November 11th, 2023. The freedom we enjoy as citizens of the United States is guaranteed by the men and women who have valiantly served in our nation's uniformed services. And November 11th, 1919 was originally proclaimed as Armistice Day to honor veterans of World War I. And in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed legislation proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day and a day to honor all veterans who have served. And Maryland is home to more than 350,000 veterans who have honorably served in our nation's uniformed services. And Maryland joins the entire nation and distinguished veteran service organizations today in observing Veterans Day with events dedicated to honoring all who served. And so this is signed by Governor Wes Moore, Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller, and Secretary of State Susan Lee.
Colonel Barry Lischinsky began his 34-year military career in 1969 as an enlisted combat medic in the Army. He subsequently attended the Massachusetts Military Academy, where he received his Army commission. Through the years of service, he achieved the rank of colonel, having served as a medical professional recruiter, medical battalion executive officer, recruiting battalion commander, and commander of a combat service support brigade, from which he retired in July 2004. After a slight interregnum, where he traveled the world a little bit, in September 2007, Colonel Lischinsky served as a senior Army instructor, Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps in 2 Boston, Massachusetts public high schools. There he instilled in high school students the core values of citizenship, leadership, and service to the community. In 2015, Barry became deputy superintendent at the Soldiers' Home in Chelsea, Massachusetts, and 1 year later was appointed acting superintendent by the governor. He retired from state service in March 2017. A member of the Jewish War Veterans since 2000, He was elected the 92nd National Commander at this year's National Convention. And it's my honor to introduce now Colonel Barry Lischinsky.
Sheldon, thank you very much, and I want to thank the JCC for having me here. Michael, thank you, and our department commander, thank you very much for being here, and most of all, everybody here, the audience, thank you very much. You know, I was here in 2019 with past National Commander Harvey Weiner, and I happened to look at this beautiful display, and I said, wow, I remember being here, but it doesn't look the same. And then somebody mentioned to me that it was just painted over. And coincidence, things happen for a reason. I'm sitting beside Michael, and all of a sudden the cell phone vibrated, and I looked down, and it was past National Commander Harvey Weiner. So I don't know what he wants, but in our faith we call it Bashir. It happens for a reason. Let me start. I want to thank all the veterans, everybody who has served, everybody who has worn a uniform. Thank you very, very much for your service. And, you know, although I'm here as the voice of the Jewish war veterans, I want to thank the not only Jewish war veterans, but every veteran that belongs to a veteran service organization, whether it's the American Legion, the VFW, the Disabled American Veterans, and so on and so forth. Not only have you served and wore the uniform as a veteran, you've now served twice. And this time you're serving as a volunteer. You're not getting paid for your service. You do everything that we ask. And for JWV, everything that we ask you to do is benefiting our organization as well as the veterans that we serve. You know, when I took over command of the JWV, I made it a tradition to look at the preamble. Our preamble dates back to 1896, when we got together to foster the care of veterans. We looked at the reasoning for JWV is because, one, that we were not recognized as veterans, and constantly we kept hearing that Jews don't serve. So our ancestors, and way back then, got together and said, we have to form an organization for Jewish veterans. And we have to tell the world that Jews have served. And Jews have continued to serve since 1896 and even before in every major war, every major conflict. And obviously in the Second World War, we had the largest amount. We had 550,000 Jews that served for the United States military, but yet we hear the rumors that Jews do not serve. So they fostered that organization, but you know, they elaborated just not for the members of our faith. They elaborated that in the preamble that we combat in every chance we get hate, bigotry, and anti-Semitism. And what we're seeing now is a rally of anti-Semitism. So we have to go and try to push back on that, combat that, and try to do the right thing to say it needs to be stopped. The other thing that was on the preamble is that we have to foster through education. And what we're seeing now as far as education with some of these major universities, that members of our faith are just afraid to go out and see in the dorm. JWV has written to the universities, to the City University of New York. We've written to University of Pennsylvania, and we've written to Berkeley in California saying we need to stop this. We need to stop anti-Semitism, that any student should be allowed to go to a university of his or her choice and have an education that the veterans have fought for, freedom of education, and we need to keep that going. Recently, last week, we heard of a university, Brandeis University, now setting out a politics, and they're saying, a policy rather, saying that anti-Semitism would be stopped. So JWV is looking at that, and as opposed to writing letters condemning universities, we want to write Brandeis University and say, thank you. you've set the standard for the other universities to emulate. So through education, we need to keep our individuals going, and we need to support when they're pushed down. We also advocate for veterans benefits for no matter what your faith is. Every veteran deserves and must maintain the benefits, and JWV is supportive of that. We have testified on Capitol Hill to keep veterans benefits going. So JWV isn't really only about Jewish veterans, it's about all veterans, and we need to know that. You know, once again, I thank all the veterans for being here, and for whatever organization you belong to, I thank you for your second term as providing a service for the veterans. You know, I heard Mr. Woods say something about family, and he's absolutely correct. What makes the United States military the best military in the world is the support that we get from our families. So I ask that everybody reach out. It's just not only about Veterans Day for veterans, it's Veteran Days for our families that support us, because without the families, we're not the secret weapon that we think we are. Okay, so I ask that you reach out and support your families. The one word, a couple of sentences that I would like to leave you with since October 7th, you're not alone. And together we make a difference. Thank you very much for having me.
A Pittsburgh native, David Brog, attended the University of Pittsburgh, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts degree. He entered the U.S. Air Force in 1955 through the Reserve Officer Training Corps and went to flight school, earning wings as a navigator and subsequently an electronic warfare officer, which was then followed by many operational assignments, including special reconnaissance missions over Eastern Europe and the Middle East, and combat in the Vietnam War, flying the Wild Weasel mission against North Vietnamese surface-to-air missile sites. David rose through the ranks from second lieutenant to colonel, earning a master's degree in science and education along the way. Following his operational flying assignments, he was assigned to the Pentagon, where he was involved in a number of international programs, including many with Israel. He was a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Air Force Air War College, where he had several papers published on tactical operations against surface-to-air missile systems. He retired from the U.S. Air Force in 1982, having earned the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Legion of Merit with 1 oak leaf cluster, and the Air Medal with 12 oak leaf clusters, and he became a military consultant. In 1988, he was selected to be in Who's Who in America, and later in Who's Who in the World. He is a past national president of the Red River Valley Fighter Pilots Association and is currently the executive director of the Air Warrior Courage Foundation, which helps wounded warriors and military families. He has appeared in several television documentaries dealing with the Vietnam War anti-surface-to-air missile operations. One of these episodes was an episode of War Stories with Oliver North on the Fox News Network. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Colonel Dave Brog.
Well, my subject that I wanted to talk about, and it's been touched on for a while, is did I feel anti-Semitism while I was in the Air Force? And I have to open up, and then I'm going to tell this through some tins. Now, those of you who flew, and Sheldon knows what a tins is, it's when a fighter pilot opens up and says, "This is no stuff," but you can turn the S into any word you want. Anyway, I will use a few tins to describe some of my feelings on the career. I did feel anti-Semitism one time. In fact, it's very interesting, Mr. Woods. There were two of us in a squadron in Europe in 1965 in which the squadron commander did not like blacks or Jews. And we were both up for major that year, and neither of us got promoted because of the effectiveness report that this particular squadron commander wrote for us. We later both became colonels, but it was earlier than that. I mean, it was later than that. But through my career, I've really never felt any kind of anti-Semitism. In fact, some of the tins that I will tell you, which many of us joke about, when we first got to Karat to fly the Wild Weasel mission, the Wild Weasel had two seats, the front seat and the back seat. And in many back seat missions, the guy in the back is called the Gib, the guy in back. Well, there was one other Jew, Stanley Goldstein, who was in my squadron, and we had known each other since we were in flying school. He says, "No, I'm not the guy in back. I'm the Jew in back." And that was his feeling. And we also, related to that, was on every Sunday night we had a barbecue at the squadron in the hooch area, where the hooch is the quarters. And the first time we went to one of those, some of the squadron guys came up to us and said, "Hey, you guys can't eat that stuff. That's pork." Stanley put on his ball cap, and he went over there and did what if there's an old Catholic joke, I think, related to this, put his hand over the barbecue pit, waved it, and said, "Once a pig, now a cow. We can eat it." So this is the kind of relationship that there was. And one other one, which I thought was really something, the Jewish chaplain really never did his job over there. And I don't even remember his name, but he was supposed to be stationed and going from base to base, but he was living in Bangkok with his wife. We were supposed to do have a memorial service for another Jewish fighter pilot in another squadron that had gotten shot down. And the Catholic chaplain, who was a good friend of mine, came up to me and said, "Dave, is it possible to do the service for Sam Bass, whose name is on the Vietnam Wall?" I had just come back from a mission. I said, "Absolutely." And when Stan came in, Stan Goldstein, I said, "Stan, we have a job to do at 1 o'clock this afternoon." So we did the service. I mean, it was acceptable through the squadron and through the wing that these Jewish guys were part of us. And the same Frank Daly, by the way, and this is another thing that I joke about a lot, was always out there blessing the airplanes before the takeoff. And he and I were very, very close friends. And he came up to me one day at lunch. He says, "Dave," he says, "you know, I know you're Jewish, but does it bother you that I, as a Catholic priest, am out there blessing your airplane?" I went over to him and I put my arm around him. I said, "Frank, it doesn't bother me at all. I'll take all the help I can get." So these are the kind of relationships that developed in combat. Now, a couple of other things that I wanted to talk about was, and I've heard many things about supporting the Israeli Air Force. One of the things, and this again was an example of no anti-Semitism. Back in 1970, the Israeli Air Force got Phantom airplanes. By the way, one of their instructor pilots was the same Stan Goldstein, who trained them out of George Air Force Base. But in the late June of 1970, they lost 3 of them to Egyptian surface-to-air missiles. And the call came out for help. Well, the Secretary of the Air Force came down to operations and said, "I need 2 people to go over to Israel to help work with the Israeli Air Force to teach them how to fight in the SAM environment." And the fact that I was Jewish was not a factor. 2 of us went over there who had flown the mission out of Karat, and we began to teach the Israelis how to live in a SAM environment. And for the next few years, I had a great relationship. In fact, one, which is another tins, I had set up through the Air Force and the Israeli Air Force an agreement where they could come and fly against our pilots out at Nellis Air Force Base. And one of the things, and some of you may know this, some of you may not, some of the things that we got from the Israelis were captured Syrian and Egyptian equipment, radars, airplanes, missiles, a few other things. We had 2 of the top Israeli fighter pilots come out to Nellis to fly against our guys at Nellis. And occasionally, our guys would go out into what is commonly known as Area 51. I mean, you've heard this Area 51 talked about all the time. And take a MiG-21, which the Israelis had given us a couple of years before, and fly it against the Israelis. Well, one day, the Israelis went into the colonel who was running this operation, who didn't know the history, and they said, hey, you're letting the U.S. Air Force guys fly that MiG-21 against us. Why don't you let one of us go in and fly the MiG-21 against you guys? And this guy, this colonel, looks up at him and said, you can't fly that airplane. That is too secret. And these Israelis looked at him and used a not so nice word, but basically said, what the hell are you talking about? We gave you that damn airplane. So this is the kind of relationship that has been through my whole career. And as a matter, I want to mention this. 2 of the last 4 chiefs of staff of the Air Force were Jews. Oh, okay. Is it, all right. Norty Schwartz was a Jewish chief of staff, I think about 10 years ago. I don't know what the years are. And Dave Goldfein just left as the chief of staff, who was replaced by C.Q. Brown. And C.Q. Brown, as you know, is a black general. And they were all good friends of mine. And when people talk about was there anti-Semitism in the Air Force? Hell no. We had 2 chiefs of staff that were Jewish out of the last 4. And I have to talk about Dave Goldfein because I was very close to his father. His father flew in Vietnam when I was there, Bill Goldfein. And Bill Goldfein was a former secretary of the River Rats, the Red River Valley Fighter Pilot Association. His successor was the same Stan Goldstein that I've talked about before. And we considered the secretary of the River Rats to be the Jewish seat on that board. Now, I was asked to run for the board, but I was not asked to run for secretary. I was asked to run as the president. So again, it shows the lack of concern whether someone is Jewish or not Jewish, but you're part of the group. You're part of the camaraderie. You're part of the team. And so I have to say that if anybody ever asks me, and I think there was a video that we did at one time, was there not, Sheldon, in which we talked about anti-Semitism in the services. I think it was with the Jewish Museum. And so I want to say that that was not ever an issue except for the one time. Now, what I do want to bring up is, and we talked about the service that Jews have done in the military. And I want to see if we can get this into the Jewish Military Museum. There were 4 Vietnam POWs who were Jewish. The first was a guy named Mel Pollock. He wasn't the first shot down, but he is one of them. He's the one that keeps me informed of what's going on among the Jews in there. Mel was shot down in 1967, was released in 1973. He was in an F-4, and he earned a Silver Star. He's now living down in Florida. The second one is Edward Allen Brudno, who was shot down in 1965 in an F-4 and was released in 73 when the POWs came home. He was also in an F-4, and he earned 2 Silver Stars during his career. A third one was an Art Bell. Now, you have to picture this. Art Bell was shot down as a pararescue helicopter rescue man at the age of 21 in 1965. He was an airman. He was a prisoner from 1965 to 1973. Can you imagine being shot down at the age of 21 and spending the next 8 years of your life in a prison in Hanoi. He later came out, got the Air Force Cross. He later came out, got a commission while he was in prison, because we had some general officers and admirals who were also prisoners of war, and they took it upon themselves to give this airman a commission. He later came out and became a C-130 pilot, and he finished out a career. The fourth one is Al Lurie. Al Lurie was shot down in 1966 and was released in 1973. He was an F-4 driver as well, and he became a brigadier general. And I would like to those of you who are responsible for the museum to figure out some way to honor these four, because can you imagine what it's like to be in prison in Hanoi? I mean, I know a lot of them because a lot of them are good friends of mine. That these people need special honor. Now, I think I've gotten through all my notes. And if anybody wants to know any more, I'm more than happy to talk about the career and talk about there are things in the Israeli Air Force that I was able to put in there in the early 70s. In fact, I was over there in 1973. I don't know if any of you are airlifters, but we captured some equipment during the 73 war, the Israelis did. And one of the things we sent back, we had such an arrangement with the Israeli military that our intelligence people and their intelligence people and analysts worked together. We did a lot of cooperative analysis of systems. And one of the things that we got was an SA-6 missile head. And SA-6 was the newest one that was out at the time. And they were going to send it back. I arranged for it to be sent back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to our analysts. And it was going to go back on a C-5. And there were 3 Israelis that were involved, and I had to write up a baloney message saying that these guys were there at the invitation of the commander of our Foreign Technology Division in Wright-Patterson. And I gave it to the chief, who, by the way, I had taught to be a wild weasel. And I said, don't lose this. This is your ticket to Wright-Patterson, because the airplane had to stop in the Azores for refueling. And if they got off to get a cup of coffee, there was going to be some air policeman that's going to say, what the hell are you doing on my airplane or on this airplane? So I says, this is your ticket. And they went out to Wright-Patterson and did some analysis on the system. So there was a lot of work that was going on with the Israelis. And I see it today, things that are in the Israeli Air Force. I'm proud to say I had a little hand in getting into the Israeli Air Force. Anyway, that's my story. That's my tins. Anybody else wants to ask some questions, I'm more than happy to answer them later. Thank you very much.
It brings back all kinds of memories. I was at George Air Force Base getting checked out in the F-4 when the first Israeli squadron came to check out in F-4s. And in November of 1969, because I was serving out of country, I was stationed in Thailand, I was able to come back to the United States on leave. And so I stopped off at my old squadron, and the Israelis had already gone, and I said, well, you know, what was it like teaching these guys? And one of the instructors looked at me and he says, well, we taught them a few things, but then they taught us a few things too. So it was an interesting time. Last but not least, I'd like to call up Joel Posnanski, a member of our chapter post, to give what I found to be an interesting Veterans Day prayer. Joel.
If you allow me, Sheldon, thank you to all the speakers. This is a prayer not just for Jewish veterans, obviously, but for all veterans. But I was very moved, Secretary Woods, by your comments about why you're here. And I did want to mention one thing, really, as it relates to a very important rally taking place on Tuesday. It's on behalf of Israel and its right to defend itself. It's on behalf of combating anti-Semitism, and it's on behalf of praying and hoping that we can get back the hostages. And Secretary Woods, specifically, I wanted to mention that in addition to obviously the great pride of Jewish veterans in how many have served, going back all the way to the 1660s in America and over 500,000 in the Second World War, we had 2 points of great pride in the 20th century organized by the Jewish war veterans. We were the first organization to march with Martin Luther King Jr. And secondly, though, as it relates to Tuesday, the Jewish war veterans in March 1933 decided alone that it was very important to march against Nazism in 1933. And they tried to get other Jewish organizations on board. Obviously, all Jewish organizations agreed with the perils of what was going on, but found that that was much more difficult. They didn't succeed. They organized very large demonstrations, rallies, actually a march, including the mayor and governor in New York, one of the largest rallies in 1933, along with a great many other veterans organizations that were willing to stand alongside them. Why did so many Jewish organizations not step forward for that rally? And I have heard over the last few days from wonderful Jewish friends why they will not be there on Tuesday. The very same reasons. They thought it would not be safe. If you remember 1933, there was actually a very active pro-German and therefore somewhat accidentally pro-Nazi American Bund, particularly in the New York area, and they had huge rallies at Madison Square Garden, and there was a lot of fear that just as we are now, some Jewish people are scared about Tuesday and about pro-Israel rallies, that there are these pro-Palestinian, somewhat accidentally perhaps pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist and pro-anti-Semitic organizations. There were others who felt that standing up was going to be, might encourage anti-Semitism. Going to rally on Tuesday isn't a lot, but it is something. And standing with Israel, standing with democratic values against terrorism is vitally important. But I wanted, therefore, to pay tribute to all those other veterans organizations then and now who stand alongside. And I must say, my English friends, I was the only Jewish officer that I know when I was at Sandhurst. I've had many calls from non-Jewish veteran friends. My veteran friends in the UK seem very clear on what is right. Together, give thanks to the Eternal, for God is good. His mercy endures forever. Avinu Shebashamayim, O Sovereign of the universe, bless our nation, the United States of America. Safeguard it and its ideals of freedom and liberty. Bless our veterans, our defenders of liberty, who brave danger to defend us from tyranny. Grant healing and recovery to those who have been wounded physically or emotionally. Keep their spirits high and make them resilient in the aftermath of danger and loss. Grant our veterans opportunities to attest to the sincerity of their gratitude as we today attest to our gratitude to them and to our reliance on you. May they find spiritual joy in love of home and family and in faithfulness to your Torah. We pray for individual and collective peace and tranquility. None who puts faith in you need ever feel friendless or forsaken. Baruch atah Hashem, Gomel Hasadim Tovim, and let us all say, Amen.
At this point, I would like to call upon Rabbi Sosan to come and say the benediction.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it as we conclude this ceremony, wonderful ceremony. Thank you again, everyone, and the honor to be here today. As we conclude this ceremony, let us invoke the Kohanite blessing. Our God and God of our fathers, bless us with the threefold blessing in the Torah, written by the hand of Moses, your servant, and pronounced by Aaron, his sons, the priests. The holy people, as it is said, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Let us say Amen.
So I'd like to thank all of you for coming out. This concludes our program, except we have some refreshments in the back, but I'm asking you to stick around and listen to some musical entertainment by Voices of Vets, who also serves the veterans countrywide now. We are really moving out. You're going to Phoenix, Arizona next, is that correct? And this is a great organization that the military and we've used quite a bit. And stick around and listen to them. I think you will like what you hear. Thank you so much for coming out. We'll see you on Memorial Day.